center.
All right, let me ask you this. So yesterday we had you on from the TCO Performance Center, where Rick Spielman was talking. And I said that Rick Spielman was going to get up at that podium and say a whole lot of nothing. And you said, for the most part, that's true, but you can kind of get an idea if you read between the lines enough of what they're thinking, their overall thinking and strategy is going into the draft. So what did you take out of what you heard from Rick Spielman yesterday in that regard?
So I think what's keeping them up at night, and I'm trying to find the exact quote here, what's keeping them up at night is that when they get to 18, there's a very good possibility that the best player on the board is not an offensive lineman, and there's a big gap between where they have a couple other guys in the first round and an offensive lineman. There is a pass rusher from Mississippi State, Montez Sweat, who has been taken off some people's boards for a health concern. So there is that. But Brian Burns from Florida State. There are a few players who in draft simulations and different mock drafts that they fall to that Vikings range. And Greedy Williams is another one. I mean, this is maybe the top corner. Pro Football Focus has him as a top prospect, top 10. If you have a top 10 prospect on your big board as a team who falls to 18 and the next best guard is 22nd or 33rd or whatever on your board, that is going to keep them up at night because they know they're going to get scrutinized for not drafting that offensive lineman, but also it's going to be hard to justify reaching that much.
Well, wait. What can I get then? If that's the case, what can I get from a team behind me in the draft who wants to come up and get said player to get me excess picks?
Yeah.
Because in this case, if I still get who I want, accumulate more picks, I'm fine with that.
That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I'm comfortable if I just don't. I think locking yourself into that pick is the one flaw with the draft sim, because it seems to me to make sense. If a team's like, oh, we'll give you this, say, oh, okay.
Well, here's what Spielman said yesterday. He said, if we have a guy we think is a Pro Bowl talent, and for some reason that guy falls to us at 18, how do you not take that player? And I think that scenario is going to happen. Just looking at the quarterback situation, when people reach on quarterbacks, what if Daniel Jones ends up being a top pick? I don't think he will, but what if he does? Then you're talking about three quarterbacks. Then you're talking about more guys getting pushed down. What if some other teams reach on offensive linemen like Andre Dillard and take him earlier than we think, or Garrett Bradbury? Now you're talking about potential star defensive players getting pushed down on the board. And that was the thing that stuck out to me the most, where he was talking about how this is a multi-dimensional type of formula where it's sort of if this happens, then you have to do that. If a Pro Bowl talent drops to you, you've got to take him. And then the question is, well, what if that Pro Bowl talent is a cornerback? And the answer might be, then you've got to take
What if that Pro Bowl talent is, because at cornerback, you pointed out that there are some concerns, a little bit of a lack of depth, especially when you consider Holton Hill won't be available the first 4 games of the season. But what if that Pro Bowl caliber player at 18 is at a position where you're pretty much set? Linebacker, wide receiver, something like that. Is that where you trade that? Is that where we get into the situation Judd just brought up, where somebody really wants a guy and is willing to give up some assets to get up and get him, and you move down and get your guy?
So let me answer your question with a question, Rob.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite things to do, as you know, Judd. What position on this football team is not a position of need?
Wide receiver.
Disagree.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they need a third wide receiver, but that's not something I'm using a first round pick on.
I mean,
that's fair.
Sure, because
I'm not taking
because there isn't the prospects for this draft.
Right.
If there was, then I would say then you have to take him. Just because you have 2 really good players, that's not enough for this guy. That's not enough for Kirk Cousins to be as good as you need him to be to actually compete for a Super Bowl. We saw that last year. They were 2 of the top 15 receivers in the league, Thielen and Diggs, and this team was a mediocre or below average passing game.
But you have more glaring needs that he needs help with. Like, we're talking about propping him up by quite a bit here.
But in this scenario, we're talking about a Pro Bowl level talent versus not Pro Bowl level talents in the other positions. If it was a wide receiver, I would say take him, stack up these weapons for Kirk Cousins, because here's the thing about Kirk Cousins' career. When he's at his best, 2015, 2016, the weapons that Washington had were outrageously good. They had at least 5, maybe 6 guys that were significant weapons for him. This team right now, if we include Kyle Rudolph, it's got 3 and maybe Delvin Cook if he's healthy. So maybe 4. And Kyle Rudolph is not the weapon that Vernon Davis or Jordan Reed were.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but the offensive line, the left side of that line is the most important thing. So if there's a Pro Bowl talent to me that's outside of the line, and I can bail back a little bit in the draft, accumulate more, and still take a guy I want, that's what I do. Because if that left side of that line is not good, this guy's destined for 6 more fumbles. He's going to get hit because you're not going to completely change him.
Well, but the thing that I'm saying is, unless you get one of these top linemen, your offensive line is going to be mediocre still. Riley Reif is not a great pass protector. That's not changing. Like, Brian O'Neill could get better. Pat Elflein, I think, definitely gets better.
But if Riley Reif has even a competent left guard, he gets better. That improves him.
I think a little bit, but you're still talking about, how about Green Bay? Green Bay getting 2 much better pass rushers now.
Yeah.
Last year, Green Bay was easy
for
whoever was facing them with the pass rush. It won't be this year.
But you are all in for this year, and you are all in for a 3-year period the day that you signed Kirk Cousins. Like, you are there's no flexibility here in my mind towards 2021 or 22. There's everything about this is, if you don't win with this guy, if you don't do everything you can to win immediately right now, which is short-sighted, which is unfortunate, but you picked the path, not me, then you're in trouble.
So I get that, and I agree with you. I always think that you do have to draft for your needs in the future, because you're not a top 10 draft team, and that Pro Bowler likely won't be there. But if we're talking about drafting a weapon for Kirk Cousins versus an offensive lineman who is 10 more spots down on your big board, then you take the weapon, because that weapon's going to have a bigger impact right away than your left guard, the difference between taking him in the first or taking the best left guard in the second. It could be a huge